Alright guys, so welcome back. This video is going to be on how to use outside information that you gather from your outside sources. I mean, I know everyone says, just put in a quotes or whatever, but that's actually not correct. And so this lesson, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important ones that you're going to have throughout the whole semester, because this sets the ground for how you use your citations for the rest of your college career. And you are going to be writing papers that require you to use sources quite often, in my opinion. And then using the information from these outside sources becomes really crucial to writing your papers. So the very first thing that I want to introduce you to is what I call the digestion method. You're not going to see this anywhere because I made it up, but that doesn't make it any less applicable. Now the reason I call it the digestion method is because it's really what's happening is you're giving someone information, you're giving them a claim. You're saying something like abortion is bad. Sure. I mean, you probably come up with better claims than that, better wording. But for an example, that's what I'm going to use. You give me that claim. Now, immediately after you give that claim, you should give some sort of support. Otherwise, you don't really have any kind of credentials. You, as you're writing the paper, hold no weight in any of your arguments. Neither do I. Neither do most people. That's why we need other scholars who have done research in whatever field or someone who has knowledge in that field to provide us with some support to say, you know what, my claim, even though I'm not a professional in that field or I'm not a scholar in that field, my claim still holds weight because this person who is a scholar in the field, he says the same thing. And so that's why I'm using this citation or this quote or this paraphrase, whatever. So after you have the claim, then you have the support. We'll just call that the outside info. Wherever you get it from. It might be from a website, it might be from a journal, it might be from a textbook, a magazine, whatever. Now you've just given the reader some pretty heavy stuff. You've said, here's what I think. This is my claim. This is basically what my paper's about. And now I'm giving you some probably pretty dense information, some dry information from a research study, a statistic from somewhere, something that may or may not be really interesting. But the thing that's really important is that this outside information supports your claim. So what you need to do now is help them digest. Help them digest what you just told them. You gave them all this information. Help them to figure out how it's tied together. And so what you do is explain how the outside info supports your claim. So it's a three-step process, and it's really pretty significant that it's only 3 steps. Because if you think about it, how much of this is going to be quoted from outside sources? Well, step 1's yours, your claim. Step 3 is you explaining how the support supports your claim. So the only part that's actually not yours is the support itself. And that's important because you should really have a 3-to-1 ratio whenever you're writing your essay. So if you have 1 quote, you should have 3 of your own sentences for every 1 quote that you have. And this digestion method helps you do that. So let me give you an example. Let's say we're doing that sample I had from last time with the MLA formatting. We're talking about abortion. Let's just say that I have a generic claim that says abortion is bad. That's my claim. That is, for this paragraph, this becomes my topic sentence. This is what the entire paragraph is going to be about. It's going to be about this topic, abortion is bad. So you can know that the rest of this paragraph is going to explain what I'm talking about when I say abortion is bad. But before I start explaining why it's bad or how it's bad, I need someone else to tell me or to tell the readers, hey, this claim that I just made, even though I'm not anybody important in the field, this claim that I just made does hold water, and here's why. So here's what you would do. Abortion is bad. That's my claim. Now I need some outside support. You might say something like, according to Lee, page 5, if you remember from the last video, that's a citation I used. According to Lee, page 5, for example, abortion is the killing of babies. And I don't mean this isn't my own belief, this isn't my own claim, I'm just using this as an example, so you can get all up in arms if you think I'm against abortion. Because that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm not against abortion, but that's just not what I'm talking about. So, according to Lee 5, for example, abortion is the killing of babies. You've just given me a paraphrase for what Lee said on his 5th page of whatever publication he had, a textbook or a journal or a publication, whatever. You took from page 5 this information. It's pretty clear to you and I, because we know what I'm writing about, that this claim supports my claim up here. What Lee 5 said, abortion is the killing of babies, supports what I said. Abortion is bad. But there's still a gap. Just because abortion is killing babies doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. Granted, it probably is. But for the reader, bad is different than killing babies. What if, in some weird world, the baby became a zombie? Uh-oh, now you got to kill him because he's going to bite you. Hopefully he has teeth, right? Anyways, what I'm saying there is that bad and killing, even though they seem like they're pretty close, for the reader, you have to tie the knot. You have to make that gap from bad to killing. From your claim to abortion, support. You have to make that gap. You have to build a bridge for the reader to go across, so it's easier for them to understand, what is your point? Where are you getting at with this? So what I always say is something like this. What this means is, and so what I'm about to tell them, what Lee just said there, what Lee 5 says, what that means is that blah, 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 blah. So in this case, what this means is that abortion through the killing of innocent children is an evil act, and therefore is considered bad. Now I know I have some gaps in my logic there. Just because it's killing, I'm basically saying it's evil. The support didn't really say that it's evil, but that's my interpretation. And so that's exactly why, if you look back at my old video, some people are going to read that and say, okay, abortion is bad. That's your claim, right? Let me pull out a different color here so you can see that. Abortion is bad. This is your claim. Your support then is what Lee says. According to Lee 5, for example, page 5, for example, abortion is the killing of babies. This is your support. Once you have your support done, now you're digesting it for him. You're explaining how that outside support supports what you just said. How does killing make that bad? Well, what this means is that abortion through the killing of innocent children is an evil act and therefore is considered bad. So that's my interpretation of the text, which is exactly why we need those citations at the end, because that may or may not have been what Lee was really trying to say. So as a writer, I'm writing my interpretation of what Lee said. And so if someone's reading that and says, okay, well, Lee 5 said that, let me read what Lee 5 actually said, and let me make my own mind. Let me interpret it in my own way. That way I can see if what you're saying really does hold any water. And that's why your information really does need to be spot on, because if they go back to Lee 5 and he's not saying that, then they're going to completely discredit your entire paper. So that's how we do this. That's why we do that. And this, in general, is the digestion method. You give your claim, in your own words. You give a support to support your claim, that one sentence, or a paraphrase, or a quote, or whatever. And then you go on to explain how that quote or that paraphrase supports what you're saying. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you is that when you're writing and you're using outside information, you're using support from outside info, most people just use quotes. Well, I'll actually tell you, 99% of the time, don't use quotes. Now, the reason I say that is because the only reason you should really use a quote is if what the author is saying can only be said in those words. Say, for instance, you're defining a definition from the Webster's Dictionary. If you're doing that, you're citing Webster's Dictionary. Really isn't a whole lot of ways to define abortion, for example. So you have to use that definition. And if you're going to use that definition, you can't really stray away from the words too much. Otherwise, you'll change the definition. So therefore, that would be one good reason to use a quote. But remember, only use quotes if the wording can't be changed that much. The other 99% of the time, if 99% of the time you don't use quotes, well, what are you using during that 99% of the time? Well, you're paraphrasing. That is, you're changing the words up because they don't necessarily need to be in the same format that you read them in. Just because he says abortion is the killing of babies, well, that's the definition, great. But if he's just saying that, abortion is the killing of babies and therefore it's bad, whatever, you could paraphrase that. You could say, according to Lee, abortion is evil. That's your interpretation. You could say, according to Lee, abortion should be stopped because it is not good. Whatever that might be. So you're paraphrasing because you want to be using your own words. Think of it like this. If you have a paper filled with quotes, then your entire paper is made up of stuff that you really didn't write. And it's not about what you wrote, it's about what the other person wrote, and you're just kind of supporting what they said. Well, that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be your claim, your paper, and the outside info supports your claims, and then you help them to understand why you're using that support to support your claim. If you do that, and the 1% of the time you use the quotes and the other 99% you use paraphrasing, that's going to keep your paper your own. It's going to keep you free of plagiarism. And as long as you cite the sources, you'll be good to go on that. So that's all I have for the digestion method. But that is how you use outside information. So if you have you'll need 3 sources for this project, and you'll need 1 in-text citation, meaning you'll need 1 paraphrase or 1 quote from every one of those outside sources, all 3 of them. So if you do that, this is how you can integrate that information from the outside source into yours. Make sure that the information you get from elsewhere supports something that you're saying, not the other way around. I think that's all I have for this video. So I will be moving on now, I think, to the guidelines for writing Project 2 to kind of go over the annotated bibliography. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And other than that, have a good week.